Tibetan Buddhists, Christians as part of the underground church.
Throughout the world, more than 2.3 billion people live in countries where people are deprived of their basic rights. In Asia, 3 of its nations, Tibet, North Korea, and Burma, face worrisome issues as the 3 countries struggle with repression and the rule of law.
Top U.S. officials, an actor, and advocates for democracy came together to the U.S. House of Foreign Affairs Committee to discuss U.S. engagement and policies on Tibet, North Korea, and Burma. Panelists showed great concern for the human rights violations within these countries. China was the major culprit of the hearing, and Congress questioned China's motives on these 3 nations.
There is a common thread that leads to a massive spider web of human rights and religious freedom violations. At the core sits China.
China is the most important ally to Burma, since it is Burma's biggest trading partner. China has helped the Burmese regime sustain its place in government and helped open economic sanctions against the country. Aung Din, director of U.S. Campaign for Burma, explained how both countries influence one another.
They need each other too. The Burmese government needs Chinese protection at the international arena. At the same time, it needs financial and material support from China. It would like to have the weapon supplies from Chinese government too. And at the same time, the Chinese government needs Burmese region too, because it would like to exploit our natural resources.
China resolutely refuses to recognize the Tibetans' basic rights.
Director and chairman of the International Campaign for Tibet, Richard Gere, spoke on the challenges of Tibet and how the Tibetans are impacted by China. He urges the U.S. to support the people's movement for democracy in both Tibet and Burma, as they share many similarities in their fight for freedom.
Yeah, it's very similar. We seem to be much clearer about denouncing the situation in Burma because we have no economic advantage to seek there. China is obviously much more complicated, but it's the same idea. It's a closed society, a repressive society. It's not free elections. People are not allowed to speak their minds or have free ideas.
The United States has a policy of pragmatic engagement with Burma, and Joseph Yoon, U.S. envoy to Burma, went to the country to engage in dialogue. He came back to the States 2 weeks ago and describes the developments there.
That in terms of concrete gains coming out of Burma, we've had very few.
Not much.
Yeah. What has happened in Burma is that it has turned increasingly to China. And how do we manage that in terms of their less dependence on other countries and more dependence on China?
Panelists and U.S. envoy to Burma, Joseph Yoon, went into the country recently and met with pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi, as well as parliament officials. Although Yoon emphasizes U.S. communication with ASEAN nations in order for Burma to reform during the hearing, he also noted that pragmatic engagement in Burma has not proved strong results. Burma still has over 2,000 political prisoners in its jails, and human rights violations still exist abundantly. Kaylin, Voice of America, Washington.